Gadriel is one of his titles because it seems to be the same angel. And so you can actually take Gadriel back to Hebrew, and it means wall of God or God's wall. So it has a Hebrew root to it. So in the book of Enoch, we don't get Tamiel, but Tamiel is one of the names that it's known, the angel is known as outside the book of Enoch. So the angel that is referencing Tamiel in the book of Enoch is actually Kazadea, one of his other titles or names. So whatever positions they would have a different name as attached to it. And some people believe as many as 7 titles were given to angels in different names, which can make it confusing if because we don't have a listing of all of their names. They've been lost, right? So and that you see him in the Chief of Tens in Enoch 6:7. And in the version that I'm using is the Ethiopian Giaz edition, so it has a couple extra verses. So if that's off a verse or so because you've got the shorter Aramaic version, that'll be. But I would advise everybody to get the longer, older edition, which is the Giaz version. And I think it's longer because it has a history of being copied down throughout Ethiopia. So you also get Kazadea in Enoch 69:12. So those are the two places that we're going to find him, and he's the 5th Jachan. So he's a very, very important fallen angel within the group of, I think, probably as part of the Satans, as part of the Jacons. And he was sort of infamous for teaching the ability to smite demons and evil spirits. He was known for abortion in the occult tradition, and they used to receive abortions through drinking a concoction that is sort of allegorized in today's occult world as a tea, as an herb tea. And one of the names of Tamiel, which I think is maybe a bit more of a transliteration, but it's also one of those other names when you research him from the occult beliefs, is chamomile, as in a teal, as in a tea. Not that if you drink chamomile today, that one that is named that it'll cause an abortion, but that was the ancient sort of name within the occult. And so he taught the ability of the smiting of the souls or demons in the physical world as opposed to spirits from the heavenly world, and the smitings of serpent bites, um, whatever that means. Let's say one side and you're being attacked by the other side, you're going to want to have magic or spells or alchemy or whatever uh, that can be used against those opposing forces, because the occult isn't one smooth organization. They have a general agreement on direction, but they have significant disagreements as to how to get there and where you humans fit in there, and then who's ultimately going to rule. So that's why you have all the wars between their visible ones on the earth, is because they're all trying to be like in that Highlander movie, that there can only be one, and there can only be one Antichrist and dynasty for the false millennium that they want to present to the world. So this is one of the angels that's presented in the book of Enoch. We don't get it in the Bible. I think we should be careful with that. I think we should use it for a little bit of context, but also understand that this is a family that produces a bloodline that shows up in the royales. And you can see that coming down through some of the Greek tribes like the Agatharsi. I always mess that up. That's the tribe of Hercules, son of Zeus. So in this case, maybe there's a ennobling of that bloodline that's going to produce Vlad the Impaler, because he has bloodlines that goes back to Zeus and back to Tamamil as his godfather. So it's not likely you have two, so it's likely there's been an intermarriage down through the genealogies, and that's how you would sort of reconcile those two different versions, I think.
Okay. I had no idea what what you just laid out to the audience. I imagine that was news for a lot of people. Being, I had no idea he was related to Tamiel.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's the deadly herbs and poisons that is sort of the specialty of his dark arts, right? Are you still there? Oh,
Yeah, yeah. It was like a brief little connecting the screen there,
sure.
but we're
Okay.
back
Yep.
on
Yeah. No,
air.
it just froze up, so I wasn't sure whether we had lost you or not.
Yeah. Now it's just I can see it on my phone. It just went in and out for a
Yep. That's
second.
fine. Yep.
You
That
know,
happens.
and the reason why we went to Vimeo, my friends, is because I believe I can put out more high quality videos using Vimeo. So please come join us on
Yeah.
Vimeo.
Yeah. I think the quality that I'm seeing from Vimeo is very, very good. That's on the screen. So yeah, it looks good to me.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was new to me. If y'all like to do what I'm doing, it's called Vimeo, and they do have a free trial. And after that, they have different plans. But I believe the highest plan is $65, and that's really not that much. Then they got where if you share a link, you share the link and get other people to join, you get $50 and other things like that. So that's another way you can support this channel is by joining Vimeo. All right, my friends. Gary, Tamiel, is she? Why is she a she and not a he?
Well, because they have the ability to take any form that they choose and any gender that they choose.
All right.
And in mysticism, you have this duality of God as a father, a parent god, and also a mother goddess, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the mother goddess has a very high position in the ancient dualism. So they like to look at the Queen of Heaven, for example, as an Inanna, or any of those titles that sort of pass down, just as the book of Jeremiah talks about offerings being offered to the Queen of Heaven. And the real queen is, and I'm not saying Tamil is the real queen here in this case, but certainly one of the mother goddesses, and certainly could have other names as well. But there's one that's in the and because this one is so high, Tamiel isn't quite talked in that way. But Sophia is the high mother goddess of Gnosticism, and that she, through some nebulous life force, procreates 12 archons who
Whoa.
are inclusive of Satan and the God of the Bible in their belief system, and probably, a name associated with Tamiel, but haven't been able to place them in one of those 12 archons. But Tamiel Kazadea is obviously very high up in a Chakan, so likely has a cognate name within those 12 archons. Well, Sophia is, the root word for philosophy, for the love of wisdom, the love
Wisdom.
of knowledge. But this is a higher rank in their pantheon that I think Tamiel actually is. So I would put Tamiel likely in with those other 12. So very high up, but below that sort of queen of heaven, that queen bee in that hive sort of mentality and allegory that they like to use in the occult.
Gary, I've asked you this question before, but EL, most angels' names end in EL. Is
Yeah.
there a specific reason why? Does that tie in any way?
Yeah, because they're creations of God, right? Angels are even the ones that rebelled, and El is the Hebrew word for an angel or a god, and in the superlative sense, or the capitalizing of the first letter, would be, God the Father of the Elohim, El of the Elohim, so to speak. And so when we have that name that ends in, let's say, Gadriel that I talked about, that means wall of God. Raphael would be healer of God, or God heals. It's a name to reflect their creation and a title that was provided to them. Probably they have multiple titles, is what we've talked about. So when you see a name that doesn't end in EL, that could be a transliteration from another language. It could be part of a compound word representing the same thing. So you have, like in the book of Enoch, you have Shemiyaza and several different variations of Shemiyaza,
That's right.
but it doesn't end in EL. And yet seems to have the same sort of responsibilities as Azazel. And it's thought that Azazel and Shemiyaza, through the corruptions coming down in translations, because we don't have a complete Hebrew manuscript for it, to check its veracity, may have been corrupted and formed into another title or a word. And from that arrival, or that etymology, out of sort of different languages. So if you look at Shemiyaza, it means, well, let's look at Azaz and Azazel first. That means very, very strong, very, very powerful one of God, or God is powerful, God is strong. And words associated, there's lots of words that are translated from Azaz and as it relates in the Old Testament, and specifically as it's talking about descriptions of giants, because they're also stout and wide and muscular, and words that are associated with that. So you put that EL on there, and you get the Azazel name. Now, Shemiyaza, Shem is the first word, which does seem to have a Hebrew word root to it. And Shem means like renowned, as in the men of renown. One of the root words, it comes from two words, is that. So of fame or infamy, you could define it other way, of reputation, just as the giants had reputation, and I think more infamous than famous, but they had a reputation that was of evil. And so Shem also derives from Shema, the singular, which we don't get in the Old Testament. We get its plural, uh, Shemaim, which means the heavens or heavenly ones, with that I am, just as Nephilim would be the giant ones, Seraphim would be the serpent ones. So that's the first part of the root. So it has a root into Hebrew, but Yaza is a Zen and an Arabic word for an angelic being, and that's part of that sort of corruption. But Aza also has part of Azazel in it, the AZA, right? And it's probably a title or a description that's been corrupted, and with all of those three, you have got Azazel, the one, the heavenly one, the strong heavenly one with reputation. And so I think it's been either shortened or it's been corrupted, but those are the sort of the root words that you would take that back to. And that's the same angel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wayne, thank you for that. CERN, they just had a festival with that lady that was on that statue and all that stuff. You know what I'm talking about, Gary? They just had a big festival for her
For
on
who?
CERN. It
Oh,
was
I haven't heard about that one. No, sorry.
yes, yeah. They just had a big festival and at CERN, and it
Was
has
it
to do with a fallen angel.
was it the dance of Shiva and things that they were
Yes,
doing
sir.
there? Okay, well
Yes, I seen it.
okay. I don't know whether that's the one from years ago or they're doing it on an annual basis, but yeah, Shiva is the destroyer god
All
of
right.
the Hindu pantheon. So Shiva is a god that is worshipped as one that is a destroyer god of the earth and a renewal of the earth, that to go through into another age, you have to destroy the earth by fire and then start all over. So it rises like a phoenix. And so Shiva is a god that had the ability to be an avatar for an avatara, just as Vishnu, also part of the pantheon, was an avatar for his avatara Buddha, who provided wisdom. Just as Satan would be the avatar Judas, who provided him the courage to go through with betraying Jesus, and he entered into Judas to do that. And so Narashima is one of the avatars of Shiva, just as interesting enough in Tolkien, not Tolkien, but Lewis's Narnia. Um, Aslan is an incarnation, which that's an avatar thing, is an incarnation into another body where you share that host's dwelling place, and that Aslan was this lion demigod in the Hindu pantheon, just as Aslan is this lion god, as he would be Jesus incarnated in another dimension or in another universe or another location. And so it is a cult sort of usurping of Jesus to redefine them in their belief system, just as the New Age believes the Christ consciousness is the Christ incarnation that's coming, that Antichrist will possess. I think there might be that avatara with Antichrist, but it's going to come from either Azazel, and I'll come back to that connection in a second, and or Satan for sure, because Satan and the false prophet received the power from the dragon in Revelation 13 and from Satan in 2 Thessalonians 2. So I think Shiva is the cognate Hindu pantheon god name for Azazel, who was the leader of the Watchers.
That's right.
Just as Shemyaza is the leader of the Watchers, but in the book of Enoch, it's actually Azazel who's put into the abyss or the pit prison with the fallen Watchers. And then he is understood as the one who taught the art of warfare, the art of strategy in warfare, the art of the tactics, and the art of making weapons to the antediluvian world, and taught most of the illicit knowledge to the antediluvians, which helped bring it to the first apocalypse by water. And he's the scapegoat that I think is atoned for on the Day of Atonement with the second goat that is sacrificed to the wilderness. And scapegoat is the Hebrew word Azazel, just as Azazel is sort of been degraded after his fall, just as all of those seraphim who would have done the same would be degraded to a watcher, satyr, hairy goat god. So Sa'ir is the word for watcher in Daniel 4. Air is the word for watcher. Sa is hairy. It's a compound word, and that's a devil goat god as it's translated in the Old Testament. Just as Azazel is the goat that's sacrificed without reason. I think it's for the sins of the antediluvian world, because he was the scapegoat in the book of Enoch, where he received most of the blame for the destruction of the antediluvian world. So, yeah, it's all sort of interconnected, and understand that if you understand that the occult religions are the same religion of Enoch, who created that original religion. They just have different names and slightly maybe different vernacular rituals, worshiping the same gods, just called differently in the different languages.
Yes, sir. You know, in the book of Enoch, you know, I just had it. You know, I just lost it. In the book of Enoch states that Enoch acted like an attorney. He goes to, you know, the what I'm trying to say is, Gary, they must have had a conscience because they're going to Enoch, right, and asking Enoch to take their case. Would you agree upon that, or I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, the book of Enoch is asking for Enoch to intercede for them after they've been charged to God. And so it's like he would like somebody who walked with God, that's human. He has a very special status, and he was taken to heaven because he walked with God, to intercede for them as a representative of the humans whom these angels were creating crimes against. And so if
Yes.
they could get him to do that, they would think that that would hold a special position. But it doesn't matter whether you're Enoch or any other human. God decides all things.
Yes.
And God and the Word and the Holy Spirit are in perfect harmony, and there's no splitting that. So somebody might say, "Well, what would happen if the Holy Spirit or Jehovah of the Elohim were to argue?" Well, they wouldn't, because they're in perfect harmony, so they cannot be split, even though they can act in a singular way.
The bottom line is Yahweh said no, and that's when he sent the flood, you know, to do away with all their, because, they sin against plants, animals, humans.
Yeah,
They just, like Gary Wayne has put it out there for y'all, the seven sacred sciences. They perverted this knowledge. And that's what Camiel did, and the others did that
yeah,
Gary Wayne is putting out there tonight.
yeah. And that's what's also interesting is about Camiel. It ends in an IEL, or that, and with that EL. So, and it goes back to, a word associated with herbs and that. I can't find chem that I found with a Hebrew. So I think it's kind of
I
like Shemyaza, where it might be, but I continue to
no,
look for it, but I haven't found a word I could actually match with Camiel out of the Hebrew lexicon, but maybe I'm just not seeing it properly. And who knows? Maybe I'm looking for it from the wrong sort of pronunciation, because a lot of times ch is a can be a k sound, right? Just
I
as you have Casadea, that could be pronounced, it's with a ch or a q, or the Hebrew. And ch is also has a silence, or like an h sound. So like Horim is chorim. And
okay.
curse, which is haram, is CHARAEM and CEREM. So it's a matter of trying to figure out what's happened with that word as it comes downstream, and then try and take it back. Sometimes they're not as easily to do, but maybe if there's somebody's out there, they might have found a word that would be more associated for Camiel as one of his titles.
That's right. And also, Mr. Wayne, um, Zimzaza was a leader. Azazel was a leader. Is that correct? And why do you think they were leaders? Or why do you think one of them either are? Why do you think they were leaders?
Well, and we have groups of Chacons, we have groups of Satans, and we have seven top angels. There is a rank and an order.
That's
So
right.
the word in the Old Testament is host of heaven, when it's referencing the host of the loyal angels. And there's a counterfeit host, and that counterfeit host, whether it's loyal or counterfeit, that word host comes from the Hebrew word Saba, which means an army of angels, which
Okay.
implies rank and order, right? So when you had the parent gods go to the pit prison for the crimes before the flood, you had the offspring gods move up in the occult religions, because they just do what you do in an army. And so it's not that they killed those parent gods, like Zeus didn't kill Kronos, for example. Kronos is
Yeah.
just gone. And then Zeus produces giants like Hercules after the flood, and there'd be a Hercules before the flood. So a lot of giants after the flood are named after giants before the flood. Gilgamesh would be a classic example, as the Gilgamesh, sixth generation after the flood, son of Lugalbanda, king of Uruk, and Nun, the fertility god. And you have a Gilgamesh in the book of Giants of Enoch that is pleading and trying to find a way to make sure the flood doesn't happen. And he goes to talk, is one of the giants who goes and talks with Enoch. So
Mhm.
that's not uncommon to have those names. But to understand the history, you have to understand it's the offspring gods that rule after the flood. It's the parent gods before that. So in the Bible, it's Baal, son of El. So El created giants and was before the flood and went to the pit prison. And then the Baalim gods, just as they're spoken of in the Ugaritic text, create the Rephaim after the flood. But they go to the pit prison as well because it's the same crimes. And so they only walk amongst humans and do those things that they did before the flood, after the flood for a short period of time. And then there seems to be more restrictions put on because we don't get them interacting with humans, either, governing them, walking amongst them, or creating more giants.
And you mentioned earlier how Azazel taught warfare and art. Do you think he taught it to Tubal Cain?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
because
Yeah, I
Tubal
think
Cain
so.
taught
Yeah.
that too,
Yeah.
right? He
I
taught
mean,
the same thing, but
well, and
he wasn't a fallen angel.
he was an
Tubal Cain,
artificer of metals of the highest order, according to the Gnostics and to the
okay,
Freemasons. And he was giant like. In fact, a lot of people in the occult or the polytheist religions would look at Tubal Cain as being a giant. He's certainly possible that from the Cainite line that he may have, Lamech may have been a giant and maybe married a female giant to create Tubal Cain. We don't know. There's that possibility, but he's recognized as an artificer of metals, ones who made weapons. Right,
yeah,
just as Cain made weapons. That's the knowledge that comes from Azazel, and the knowledge that the angels bring, it merges with those seven sciences and takes it to a whole new level, so that the whole world becomes corrupt. The whole earth does, I should say, as the Bible
yes.
says. That's the Hebrew word shakath, which means to decay, to ruin, to destroy, to spoil, words like that. And so what it's saying is everything on the earth is had its DNA changed, or it's had its plant genomes changed. And I think that's one of the reasons why God selects who's going to be on the ark, the eight that are going to be pure, both physically and spiritually. And he only calls representative species to populate the ark, to populate the world after the flood, who are not corrupted. Even though you've got clean and unclean, that's a difference in understanding as opposed to DNA corruption.
Gary, when you're studying Hebrew, Hebrew word, it's from the when you pronounce it, it's from the right to the left. It's when you sound it out. Is
Uh,
and
yeah, because if you were reading in Hebrew, you would read opposite to what we do. So
okay,
when you see the Hebrew letters, yeah, you got to start from there and go the other direction, and then mentally do the
I
change
know.
in your head to go over, right?
Yes, and that's why Gary Wayne's book is so important, my friends, is because Gary has done all this work for us. You know, like kind of like underneath Gary, it says Shua, and it's if you start from the right, Shua, it makes sense what Gary just said. It's pronounced from the right to the left. But Mr. Wayne has done a lot over 40 years into Genesis 6 conspiracy. Now he's put out part two. And my friends, it's a must have for your collection. And if you don't have it, please go and get it. And I have it on the link or on the screen. It's not a link, I'm sorry, but it's just it's where you go to get Gary's book. Is
Well,
that Genesis?
and if you're
Go ahead.
into the Hebrew, if you're into the Hebrew words, I
Okay.
do etymology in the first book, but not the same way I do it in book two, because now I'm going right to the sources. I'm not using other people and letting them talk in their own words. So I'll give you the spellings of the words. I'll give not in the Hebrew letters, but I'll give you the definitions. I'll give you the English transliteration, and it'll be on the same page. And you'll see that a lot of the words have multiple meanings, and so you have to be careful on the translation so that it doesn't contradict what the sentence is saying, what the verse is saying, what the chapter is saying, or anywhere else in the Bible. And that's sort of the standard I think you need to have if you're looking at the words to see whether or not it was translated accurately. So that's how I test what I think it should say if I disagree with the translators.
Yes, and like Gary Wayne was talking about when the Book of Enoch, it's very important what translation you get. And
Yeah.
what was that translation again, Gary?
I like to use the one out of Giaz, Ethiopian.
All
Um,
right. Yes. Go
and
ahead.
their tradition has it coming down from the time of Solomon.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
and the Aramaic version, may, from a surviving manuscript would be dated a little bit older than the ones that are being passed down, but it's like the Masoretic text. They do it in the same tradition as the rabbis, where they would keep updating it and keeping the translations and double checking it and the accuracy with the old one so they would preserve it properly. And so they're renewing those scrolls. They weren't saying, well, geez, 2,000 years down the road, we might have some so-called seculars are saying that we want to be able to test it with carbon dating to see who's the more accurate one. And it
Yes.
really hasn't anything to do with that. So just an older surviving document doesn't make it more accurate. You have to
Yeah.
take it against the original Hebrew as best as you can.
And my friends, 2 and 3, there's no doubt it's been tampered with. It's nice to have for your collection as well, but don't try to study in 2 and 3 because it's just going to confuse you because all
Yep.
that Metatron stuff is a bunch of hogwash.
Yep. Or when they're talking about gods like Zeus,
Yeah, it's just like, and I have
there's been
people
some
ask me all the
corruptions there.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If
definitely a lot.
uh, if it hasn't been totally corrupted, then it would be versions written or surviving from Enoch, son of Cain. That's how
Yes,
I would look at it. So it's one
and
of the
Gary,
two, but
somebody,
don't rely on it.
yeah, and somebody had to teach Cain Enochian mysticism. Who do you
Yeah.
think
Well,
taught him?
Cain taught all the knowledge to Enoch,
Okay,
and then Enoch took that knowledge and moved it into the seven disciplines. And then to protect it from what they would call the mundane or the Sethian line, or anybody they would consider poor and not of their sort of royal lineage, they created the mystical religions and the initiation, and to learn that through the process to keep it away from the mundane because they didn't
yes,
want that knowledge understood. And then, even more so, when they received the illicit knowledge from the fallen angels, it was even more so that they needed to secret that because that provided them their power. If you distributed all of that knowledge, uh, you know, people could use that against you. So only the nobility class, the royales, the descendants of the giants, uh, both in the religious or the business or the educational classes, that they were taught that. But the mundane, whoever they considered mundane, not with the proper genealogies, would receive that knowledge. And if they were at, like, say, a lower level of the religion, just as Freemasonry is set up, where you don't know anything, you're just told lies and half truths until you become
yes,
an adept at third degree York Rite or 33rd degree Scottish Rite.
yes. It's so sad that I say on the show all the time. There's three major lies. Number one was to hide your creator's name, and in 1611, my friends, they took out the name. There's much power in the name of Yahweh.
Yeah.
Gary, would you like to see? Gary, we got about 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes left in the show. Is there anything like your heart's burning for to put out there tonight, yearning for?
Um, hadn't really thought about that sort of aspect. Is there any one thing that, um, yeah, there's a couple of passages in the Bible that I think um, really should have a believer sit up and take note and say, what are these passages talking about?
All right.
And so the first one would be Psalms 21, 8 through 10. And in that passage, you have um, a reference to the time of God's fiery wrath. And in that time, uh, God is going to destroy the fruit of a certain people from the earth. And it says that right after that, it says, and their seed from among the children of men. This is talking about a different seed line.
Okay.
It's different than the seed of men. And that's what's going to be dealt with in the end time. You have Isaiah 25, 1 through about 8, and it's talking about the terrible ones that I've talked about probably on this show before.
Yes, sir.
And these are the strong ones. They are a branch of people that are the strong ones. They are a distinct branch genealogical line that are going to be destroyed on a specific mountain in the end time. These are the terrible ones that are talked about in Ezekiel 32, which are the terrible ones. Aritim, as that would be in Hebrew, and I cover this off in my new book. And they're talking to a pharaoh, another terrible one, from the sides of the pit prison. And these are the terrible ones who did horrible things to humankind when they were on earth and were slain and were sent to the sides of the pit. These are the terrible ones. This is that branch that is going to be separated from humankind, removed from humankind in the last days at Armageddon. And then you have this very peculiar passage in Daniel 2:43 that's talking about the descendants of the beast empires are going to mix their seed with the children of men. And again, they're talking about two different species. So whether or not it's descendants or it's newly created species of giants that are going to be the 10 kings in Daniel 2:43, the Bible over and over tells us about this seed line, and I think it begins in Genesis 3:15, where it's talking about that serpent seed line, which is the seraphim angels creating the serpent-faced giants in Genesis 6, and the Rephaim after the flood, and it's that serpent bloodline of the Watchers of the Sair, the degraded ones now, that
Yeah.
are the visible ones running the earth for the invisible ones. And that if we really want to understand what this world is all about, we have to understand there's that bloodline that is the Royale, with AL being a transliteration of EL.
EL.
Yeah, kings of gods, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I understand. And they're jockeying for position right now, my friends.
They are.
You know,
They are.
they really are. I mean, there's. This is why you need Gary Wayne's book, because Gary Wayne puts these bloodlines in order for you. I mean, my friends, and it's broke. Don't let it the books. This is Gary Wayne's book right here, of course, but don't let the size scare you away from the book, because it's broken down into small chapters where a person can digest each chapter, and that's what it did for me. It's what it did for me. That's what it because I wasn't a big reader, but what I am able to do with Gary Wayne's book too is go into this book and retain knowledge, because it might be something that I'm studying over here, but Gary's written about it in his book, and then I can go into Gary's book and see what Gary had to say as well. And I'm just trying to let y'all know what the book did for me, and I just want for y'all to go out and get Gary's new book, and also, I don't think Gary plugged it like this, but how I always tell people, go to Amazon and get Gary's. That's where I've gotten Gary's books from, and it's very easy. And if you want a signed copy, go to Genesis 6 Conspiracy at gmail.com, and you can get it. Is that correct, Gary? They can get a
Yep.
signed copy?
You can, and you can have it signed to any person that you want. I like to personally address the signing. And if you wanted a special line, there's some room in there, or you can just email me after you order the book, and I can do a specific Bible passage or however you want it inscribed, because I personally sign every book as they come in. I don't pre-sign the books, so that I have the flexibility on that. And on the website, both with book 1 and book 2, and you have to be careful, they're both up there. There's a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book 1, and a generous excerpt of all 84 chapters of book 2. And so it's a little bit smaller than the first book, but it's loaded with information, and those excerpts are just a small slice of how much information is actually in the book. So just as book 1 has become, as Bishop has been talking about, a reference book, and I
Yes,
get a lot of emails where people say, I have it on my shelf so that I can pull it out and go to the chapter, because the chapters are, sort of named by that main topic. Book 2 is going to be like that for Christians who want to go deep into the Bible. Um, I've not read any of Dr. Heiser's stuff, but I would say this has the second book is written in a similar kind of way, but again, specifically targeted at Christians, which is unique, and in a way that connects the dots and gives you more information on the Old Testament than that's out there. This research, there is no other research out there like this book and the information that's in there. So you want to know everything about giants that are in the Bible, the hybrid giants, the angelic order, the counterfeit order, how identifying words both in Hebrew and in English as it's translated helps you to define end time prophecy. I highlight those, and then I lay it down in a chronology uh, in the last 2 sections, where you can sort of connect it all the way through. And you're going to see how the Bible is this seamless narrative, and it's there. We just need to take the time to digest it.
and seek. You got to seek it. And Gary Wayne's book lets you comprehend it. Uh, that's what it did for me. Yeah, Gary, you told me you announced at the beginning of the show uh, you had COVID for the last 2 weeks,
Yeah, over 2 weeks now. Yeah.
and
Yeah, I'm testing negative now, but I'm not 100% yet. I still have really heavy in the chest and thick in the
I
head.
can hear
So
it.
I may
I
not.
heard it throughout the show. Throughout, I was just
I'm hoping I'm being coherent enough for people tonight.
no, you are absolutely more coherent probably than I. But they, I just know that we all need to go in prayer, and this is why we need to seek and stay in prayer and build a conscious contact, a relationship with your higher power, because if we don't, things like this happen, and when we reach out to our higher power, if we're not praying and lifting people up, then you're really not praying. You've got to pick weeds because this is new information for a lot of people, and that's what Gary Wayne does. Uh, you reach out to Mr. Wayne. He's going to get back to you with your questions. I've seen him do it for over 7 years now.
And I'm catching up because I'm not working on any editing or anything like that for the book. So I'm down to about 1 to 2 weeks on response time, as opposed to 2 to 3 months. So I want to be able to keep that type of response rate. So if you get a hold of me, you have a question, I will get back to you.
Yes, that's what makes Mr. Wayne so real. All right, my friends, I'd like to pray for us, and we're going to close this show. Before I pray, I like to say that Mr. Wayne comes to this show monthly. So please subscribe, like, and do all that stuff. But do it on Vimeo. Right now this video is being broadcast private, so I didn't get to really put it out there. I had it marked where you had to pay for it. I'm going to take it off of that, and that way everybody can do it now. And it's all new for me, and I just enjoy doing this, and I enjoy that Mr. Wayne allows us to come to the show. All right, my friends, please bow your heads with me. Father Yahweh, we offer ourselves to you, Father, to build with us and to do with us as thy wilt. Relieve us of the bondage of self, that we better do your will and not our own will. And take away our difficulties, that our victories may bear witness over the people we will help today. You know, I lift Mr. Wayne up and his family. I asked you, Father Yahweh, to protect him and do the things that he's able to do, because I know that you work through Barry Wayne, because I see it all the time through his books and through his videos, and I could not bear it. All right, my friends, my name is Bishop Holosonback. This is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group, and I want to thank you for tuning in tonight. Hallelujah.